Hello and welcome to another Ask Cheeky. This week's question comes from Hanjay Habadicha. Hanjay says, project management is interesting to me. What are different types of project management? What do I need to know to get into this career? Great question, Hanjay. Project management is something that you as a PhD have a lot of experience in. There are multiple types of project management. It's a very large field. And there's a lot that you can learn. But don't overcomplicate it. As a PhD, you've managed multiple projects. You've managed large projects and broken them down into smaller projects. You juggle projects, you manage people, etc. In terms of managing projects, always keep in mind what it means to be a project, okay? Usually it means having milestones, key benchmarks or deliverables that you need to hit or accomplish, budgets. That's something that as a PhD, most of our projects that we don't consider, but there is a budget. You have to usually fall under that budget, hopefully not too far under that budget because you want to estimate budgets correctly. We can get more into that later, but let's talk about the third thing first, timelines. Okay, so consider a project something that requires a timeline, a milestone, at least one milestone, likely multiple milestones, which could be called, again, benchmarks or deliverables, and then a budget as well, especially for industry. Now, in terms of project management overall, there are multiple types. I'll talk about three here. There are so many different types of project management. And what you need to understand is that the project management philosophy that you might follow in a particular company is going to be very specific to that company, even to the team that you're working with, to that team's goals, to the project's goals. And it could change. Some people get very, very intense in project management. You can get degrees for project management, but I do not recommend this for PhDs. There's a large-scale study that came out that showed that if you get a PMP certification, for example, you're no more likely to get hired in a project management position than if you don't have that. And I mentioned that because that's several $1,000s. You don't need that as a PhD. You have enough education. Lifetime learning, continue to learn, continue to get involved with networks, to network with other project managers if you want to get into this role, but you don't need that multi-$1,000 certification. So in terms of types of project management, I'm going to talk about Agile project management, Waterfall project management, and Six Sigma project management. There's entire textbooks written on each of these types of project management. The one that you're likely using right now in academia, if you're in academia, the one you've had exposure to is the Waterfall project management method. Think of this as linear for every project. Now, of course, you'll repeat it, which makes it cyclical. Like for every project, you'll repeat the different phases. But for one project, it's linear, and it's called Waterfall because you keep going down to the next step, and you can't go back up, just like you can't climb up a waterfall. You just go down to the next level. And it starts with understanding the requirements, going through some planning phases, some execution phases, and then, of course, some measuring, closure, and even monitoring or maintenance phases. This is what you've done, again, in academia. It's what you've likely had exposure to. You made a plan. You executed it, you got data, you analyzed the data, and then you moved on to the next project that might have relied on that data. But either way, it was a separate project. The pitfall of the waterfall methodology is that sometimes these projects can take 6 months and you don't get any feedback. You don't get the data for 6 months. And very likely you could have gotten feedback earlier had you structured the project differently that would have shown you were on the wrong track instead of waiting to 6 months later to get the data to find out you were on the wrong track. Because of this, a PhD, Dr. Sutherland, created a different type of project management called Agile project management, which has really been made popular in the tech industry, and now a lot of companies use it. People get very enthusiastic about Agile. It's not just a project management methodology to many people, it's an entire life philosophy. It just means being more flexible and breaking down projects into smaller time units called sprints. And there's multiple types of Agile project management. Maybe you've heard of the Scrum methodology. These are where there's a work cycle, often called a sprint, that's only 1 to 4 weeks long. And you cycle through these very, very quickly so you can get feedback faster. And usually at the end of each of these cycles is some sort of deliverable. And that's why it's popular in tech and software, is because there could be a new feature at the end of that cycle that you get into the hands of users who use it on a phone, for example, if it's an app again, and then you get feedback and you can decide on which feature to create next or how to change that feature. Okay, so it's very agile. Now, again, you can mix and match. Some people use Agile fall, which is Waterfall with components of Agile into it. It's usually that term is kind of derogatory to companies who wanted to adopt the Agile philosophy, but because they're so big or because their projects take so long that they can't ever be fully Agile, so they put Agile together with their old Waterfall methodology. But this is okay. Think of a big pharma company. Clinical trials. You cannot do a sprint in 1 to 4 weeks of a clinical trial. It's going to take much longer than that, and that's okay. Now, another very popular project management methodology that you'll likely be asked about if you go on an interview to be a project manager is the Six Sigma. This was made famous by, I believe his name was Bill Smith for Motorola, and became very, very popular when Jack Welch was the CEO of General Electric. In the 90s, they used this. This is something, think of it as like there being a p-value for a project. So a project that takes a long time usually involves manufacturing, where there's multiple steps, and there's a leakage of quality from one step to the next. And you want to minimize this leakage of quality by looking at statistics. And there's each sigma of leakage. It's a measurement of how the quality decreases, and you want to keep the quality decrease down to 0.000 like 44. There's a lot that goes into the Six Sigma methodology. There's different types of Six Sigma methodology. There's Lean Six Sigma methodology for project management. The key takeaway for you is that you should understand these concepts, especially if you're interviewing to be a project manager. You already know how to manage projects. Do you know how to plan a project? Do you know how to execute it? Do you know how to get the data, the feedback, and how to analyze it, how to close out the project, and then finally how to maintain whatever the deliverable is afterwards? Yes, you do. You've managed multiple projects. You can do this. Don't forget the people side of project management too. You'll have to coordinate with lots of people, lots of departments in industry as a project manager. So it does look different. There's a lot of tools. It's a large field. It's definitely something you could handle as a PhD. Hopefully this helps you with your project management question. As always, remember your value as a PhD and start thinking and acting like a successful industry professional.